Welcome back. We're talking about burnout with Bonney, and great first and second segments there. Lots to talk about, and I really enjoy some of the examples, and I hope people are paying attention to this because I think I know a few people who are experiencing burnout, and I don't think they really want to admit it.
No, it is hard to admit. That's one of the hardest
Yeah,
pieces is realizing, oh crap, I'm I'm on the edge here.
yeah. And so our last piece that we wanted to talk about today is emotional energy. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so everything that we've talked about so far is on the big scale, looking at your job, looking at your home life and taking those inventories and looking at some of the things. But when we talk about emotional energy, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're getting down to the day-to-day Tuesday at 4:45 when you're about to rip out your hair and you still have to go to one more meeting. And basically, emotional energy, the way I think about it, is it's the stuff you need to be able to react in an emotionally mature way when you're faced with a stressful situation. Now, this is one of the things about significant stress and burnout is that it's really hard to harness the emotional energy to be able to not yell at your kids or not slam the book down and walk out of a meeting when you're in a stressful situation. And so figuring out on the day to day how to kind of harness a little bit of emotional energy, get that little burst of air that we were talking about in our little wiggly marketing man, can really help you get through the day without creating more problems for yourself the next day. So basically, when you wake up in the morning, you have 100 units of emotional energy, for example. If you have little children, you have about half because you probably didn't get a good night's sleep. But you have a bunch of emotional energy, and every decision you make, every stressor that you deal with, every and decisions, maybe good decisions. What are we having for dinner? What pants am I going to wear to work? Or maybe I have to go in and have a tough conversation with my boss, or I have to do a presentation for the board. All of these things eat away at your emotional energy like pocket. And if you've ever felt hangry, you remember those Snickers commercials where,
Yep.
again, you are slamming books down and running out of the room. You're not able to control your tears when you're in an intimidating situation. That's all anger. And it's not necessarily related to food. A lot of times it is, but it's not necessarily related to food. But when you run out of emotional energy, it's really hard to act, to think before you react and to act in an emotionally intelligent way. And so the key is with emotional energy is to figure out how do I give myself just a little bit of a buffer before I walk into that 5 p.m. meeting that I know is going to be super stressful. And this just gives you a little bit of boost of emotional energy, or if we're talking about our wiggly marketing guy, just a little bit of air so I can be there for the meeting. So some of the easy ways to give ourselves a little bit of boost of emotional energy, hydration, making sure we're hydrated. And this is, I'm an endurance runner. I've got a marathon less than a week from today. Oh my gosh. And I always know when I'm dehydrated during a race because I get really weepy. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. And that's not me at all. And so I'm like, oh, must be, dehydrated. But it makes a huge difference. So if you're a big coffee drinker, if you're a big, soda drinker, I always do an alternating thing. One coffee, one water, one soda, one water. Or if you can cut out the soda and the caffeine and the coffee altogether, that might help too. But most people are like, yeah, that's not an option. But hydration is big. Getting exercise. You talked about earlier, maybe when I'm at home, I like to do a puzzle, but I can't do that at work. I like gardening. That was the example you used. But I can't do that when I'm at work. Maybe I can just go walk around the block. You don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. A walking meeting, just getting up to go over and talk to a coworker. That movement can really help you gain a little bit more emotional energy. Parking a little bit farther away, those things. Just getting that movement can really help. Sleep's another one. If you can get a full 8 hours of sleep, great, do it. Most people, that's not an option either. I love the car nap. If I get to some place 10 minutes early, I will set the timer on my phone for 8 minutes, park in a shady spot, definitely put the car in park, and then just sit back and stop. for 8 minutes. I know the alarm's going off, so I don't have to worry about it. And, just take that 8 minutes of just nothing. It can give you that emotional energy that you need to be able to make it through the next meeting. I mean, the last easy one is nutrition, eating the right food, swapping out a salad for the French fries, on one of those tough days, those little shifts. And we all know what they are. You don't have to eat kale 3 times a day, but making those little changes on those days that are going to be extra hard can give you that little boost of emotional energy.
Here's something I was thinking of when you were talking. What about people working from home now more than the office, where the lines are kind of blurred?
Kind
So,
of.
yeah, a lot blurred, I guess, or gone. Um, because some of those outlets that you suggested, they take place at home, regardless. And the meeting at 5 o'clock, you're still at home. You're not in your car to take that little nap before you get to your building, or when you're sorry, not before you get when you get to your building, not napping in the car while you're driving. So, some of those things now with people working at home, burnout seems to be a little bit different. So how do we go about doing that now? Because our complaint about the office, in a way, we're kind of complaining about our house.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and we're not used to drawing the boundaries to create that separation. And it's really just recognize this goes back to control, right? Where do I have control to be able to take a break, to be able to end my work day in a meaningful way? So during the pandemic, when I was working at home all the time, when I would finish the workday, I would go outside, take a walk around the block, and that was kind of my commute. But it was my way of creating a separation, saying, I'm done with work now and I'm going home. Figuring out how you can do those little things to create what you need in your new setting. And it means getting creative and doing some things that might feel abnormal. It might feel a little unusual and weird. But if that gets you what you had in the office that you're missing now, great, get creative. And this is a fun brainstorming thing to do on Margarita Monday with your coworkers. Like, how are you getting through this? How are you creating the boundaries? And everybody brainstorms and we all have a good time. So that's a fun thing to talk about.
After a few margaritas, I'm sure it is.
The ideas flow more easily after. That's true. And I don't drink anymore much, so.
Just out of curiosity, does introvert or extrovert come into play here?
It does in how you satisfy what you need. But if you're talking about from a social perspective, it does not. Introverts need social interaction in a different way, but they still need that connection. And so, if you're talking about from a social perspective, it's just in the how. And that's going to happen with different personality styles, extrovert, introvert, what you're used to from how you grew up and how your family culture was. Everybody's different in so many ways. So it's all going to be different for everyone.
Does introvert or extrovert have any impact on or any indicators for burnout? An extrovert will experience burnout differently than an introvert, or do we all experience it the same way?
I don't know if there's any data around that. That would be an interesting thing to look up. I don't know. I think there's so many factors involved in stress and burnout that I would guess not, but I don't know. There might be. Introverts might just be better at being like, no, I'm going to go over there and get what I need. I don't know.
Yeah, try to anyway.
Right.
I'm an introvert, and I try to get away from things every so often as well. And I'm not worried what other people think about it. It's like, well, too bad. I don't want to burn myself out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest thing to recognize in all of this. It takes time to think through this. It takes patience. It takes stopping what all of the life momentum. And so often these days, our lives are just moving forward at such an incredible freight train speed that it's hard to pause and think, what do I need? What do I need to change? But the problem is when we get to that point of actual burnout, I mean, there are going to be huge changes and you're not going to like them. And so by kind of trying to tackle this stuff earlier, finding your outlets, finding that social support, trying to work through that inventory, hopefully you can eliminate getting to that point of actual psychological burnout where you have to make significant life changes or you'll end up in the psych ward, seriously.
Well, I was going to ask that question. If we don't address burnout and we're not seeing signs of burnout or someone else is not pointing something out for us, what are the ramifications of us ignoring it?
Stress leads to depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation comes in here because we feel like we're completely out of control. Because we have gotten to that point where the stress has just taken over our ability to function. It's not pretty, it is not comfortable, and it's hard to recover from. And so taking the time to figure this out, and know this stuff, even if you don't feel like you're feeling stressed at all, just being able to watch out for these things. And to recognizing them in your staff, if you are a manager or you're leading a company, or recognizing it in your family, and educating them on what they need to do and how they need. And these are just 5 of a lot of different factors that'll contribute, but they're big ones that you can start to zero in on and say, okay, where is this affecting me? Because you don't want to get to that point of extreme burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I knew someone many years ago who didn't recognize that and unfortunately took their life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I wanted to ask that question, is so that people realize that it really can lead to some really dark places if you don't address it.
Yeah. I mean, this is as serious as heart attack, as stroke, as, any of the other physical injuries that you could end up with.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Anne, is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with regards to burnout?
This social aspect is huge. Figuring out how you get that satisfying social connection, whether it's a volunteering situation or a social club or some kind of connection with friends, or even connecting with the people that you work with. That is such a huge factor, being able to laugh, being able to have somebody there that's got your back, that you can call at the last minute and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to take care of my plants while I'm on the road. And please this literally happened to me this morning. Can I bring my plants over to your house? Stupid little stuff like that. That somebody's got your back, which is just a massive thing. And so even though we downplay that a lot and, getting off social media is very, very helpful because those aren't real, genuine connections that feed what we need, and really getting out with real humans or jumping on the phone or Zoom to have a little connection like this.
Yeah.
It's massive.
I know my social network grew significantly when I started going to the dog park. They opened a dog park just a block away from where I live. And every time I go there, I know a whole bunch of people that are in there. And we chat about work and sports and social events and whatever else is going on. And that's a support network I didn't know. When I go to the UK later this year, there's a couple of people from that network that are going to be looking after my dog and keeping an eye on my house.
And even if you never had that, they're taking care of my dog exchange, just looking forward to going there and looking forward to that's an outlet. It's an outlet too that has the social aspect in it. That's amazing. And sometimes a therapist is that social connection, is that person you can genuinely talk to about what you need, or a podcast, so really think about where you can get those connections.
And on that note, we've come to the end of the show. And thank you once again. It's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Alex. Thank you so much for having me back.
Wonderful. And who knows, there may be a third time after your all your marathons and your big trip coming up. Who knows? And everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.